devoted to him, it makes him stop. You know what that tells me? That hearts that are fully devoted to God are rare.
Being fully devoted. Next time on Bold Steps. You are listening to KELP El Paso. Feed your mind, feed your soul at 1590 AM, 95.9 FM. Streaming worldwide at KELPradio.com.
5 Talk is a production of Desert Voice Media. You can visit desertvoice.media to learn more.
915 TALK.
The world is looking at El Paso.
What will we say to the world? From the KELP studio in El Paso, this is 915 Talk.
And now your host.
This is 915 Talk, and I am your host, Andy Freck. It looks like a beautiful day here in the borderland. Mac Daddy Del Norte, how are you doing today?
Yes, I'm doing good, Andy.
Yeah, no windstorms today, not as blustery as it has been. I'll tell you what, those windstorms, they start to grate on you after a while. I'm just being honest, So, Mac Daddy Del Norte.
Yeah.
We're just learning. We're on this journey together.
Yes.
And today we have a very special guest.
Oh, okay.
But before we get into the guest, have you ever heard of the Serenity Prayer?
No.
No, the Serenity. Do you know what the word serenity means, Mac Daddy Del Norte?
Nope.
No. Okay. Well, I Googled it before we came on air. So it's the state of being calm, peaceful, and untroubled. So, Mac Daddy Del Norte, let's say you were needing to be in a state of calm, peace, and just feeling untroubled. How would you pray?
Oh, how would I pray?
Yeah, that's what I asked.
Okay. Well, I mean, I would pray for that peace to God.
Right, exactly. So you could try the Serenity Prayer.
Okay.
It's a famous Christian prayer. So this is how it goes.
All right.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think a lot of times we're trying to change things that we can't, and a lot of times there's things that we can change, but we just don't have what it takes to engage.
Right.
And we don't have that peace. Do you ever worry about anything, Mac Daddy Del Norte?
Yeah.
Like what's your favorite thing to worry about?
Favorite thing? Finances. Always.
Yes. So that's very unusual. Not very many people worry about that, but I'm just joking. But it's interesting because today we are going to be talking about anxiety.
Okay.
And anxiety, if you look at the statistics, is just like going off the charts. And so today we have with us one of our good friends of 915 Talk, and he is the Executive Director of Living Hope Counseling Services. We're going to be talking about anxiety and hopefully overcoming anxiety or some tools for dealing with it or something. I don't know where we're going with this, but without further ado, let's give a very warm Borderland welcome to, again, the Executive Director of Living Hope Christian Counseling Ministries, Robert Hart.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
Yeah. Well, welcome back, Robert. Yeah, it's good to be here with you. Good to have you back. We've talked about so many things in the past. I guess this is your third time here.
It is.
Yeah.
Third time's charm.
Yeah, and last time we did discuss my internet addiction to
chess.
To chess.
Yes.
I just don't want anyone to be too concerned, so I immediately say to chess.
Correct.
But we were talking about, like, what could we talk about during this conversation? And This is something, quite honestly, I've struggled a lot with in my life. So I have no problem discussing that.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's particularly unusual. I am like Mac Daddy Del Norte. I've worried about finances from time to time.
Sure.
But anxiety, it just seems to be growing.
Well, what'd you find when you did your research?
Well, my research was just a few minutes on AI.
Okay.
But what I saw was in 2022, this is according to the American Psychiatric Association, 32% of U.S. adults reported increased anxiety. 2023, 37% reported increased anxiety. 2024, 43% reported. And so...
You see the trend.
The trend is just like off the charts. It's talking also about COVID-19. I'm sure we'll talk about that today and how that affected anxiety.
Yeah. All of those stats you just gave were post-COVID, so you can see.
Right.
Yeah, that's where really, I think as a nation, we really started turning a corner.
Right.
So, which is really sad. I mean, we were kind of taught to act in anxious ways.
Right.
Like from leaders, they said, okay, isolate yourself. Don't stand close to anybody. The Lord knows you shouldn't touch them. And those are the behaviors of anxious people, right? And then we're also told, you're probably going to die if you do any of those things we told you not to do. It was an interesting time in our country. So in our world, really.
Yeah. And so what you're saying is during COVID-19, we were told to behave like anxious people.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so...
How interesting.
So, of course, it's easy to internalize it. And, of all the kind of mental and behavioral health conditions, this may sound odd, so don't stop at the beginning of what I say.
Okay.
Stay with me. But I really enjoy working with anxious people because anxiety typically is some of the quickest to relieve of all of the mental and emotional health conditions because it is very physical in its nature. You cannot be both anxious and relaxed at the same time. So there's like a one-to-one correlation and connection between anxiety and physical tension and stress. So typically, if a person is feeling anxious, if they will just do a body scan, and this is where it's unique to everybody, where, Andy, where you hold your tension and stress is going to be different than where I hold it.
Right.
But once you locate in your body where you keep your tension and stress, usually you can relax that region and your experience of anxiety and distress will come right down accordingly. So if you keep, well, let me just ask you, you admitted earlier that anxiety is a thing you have. If you just scan your body real quick right now, where in your body do you normally feel it?
So my dentist told me.
In your jaw.
Yes. Yeah. He
clench your teeth?
Yeah. He said I have the teeth of like an 80-year-old man. He said my jaw muscles were super jacked.
Yeah.
Like I've been working out. I used to, years and years ago, I would grind my teeth.
Yep.
Fortunately, that has not been the case in past 20 years.
Good.
But that is definitely one of the, I would say, one of the areas.
Yeah. So, and I'm guessing no one's ever taken you through a class or on how to relax your jaw muscles, right?
No. No. I mean, the dental hygienist did his best to shame me.
Shame, ultimate anxiety reducer. He said sarcastically.
But it was he made a really big deal out of it, and I mean what you're talking about is super interesting. I mean you're saying if I relax my jaw.
Yeah, first of all, you got to notice when and where you feel it. Your jaw is kind of a challenge because it is the muscles are in. Even though you use them every day, whether through talking, chewing, or swallowing, they're in places that are harder to stretch. Like as opposed to, if you have your chest muscles, you're used to stretching your chest or your legs or your back even. Your jaw is a little less obvious for you, but there are things you can do to stretch and then subsequently relax those muscles. And typically when you do that, when those muscles start to relax, your anxiety will also come down. So
You can almost like program it. Is that what you're saying?
well, it is a way to reduce the physical and subsequently the emotional distress that the muscle tension tends to reveal. Now, that's what you do after the fact. That doesn't get to what's causing the anxiety or what's causing the
Right.
fear and worry. That's a whole different area. And I figure we're going to spend some time today talking about that.
Yeah, of course.
But that's a strategy that pretty much any listener out there, any person can do to help if you struggle with anxiety.
Just as a first step.
Absolutely. First thing, just notice in your body where you experience it, and then you work to relax that.
Well, let's talk to Mac Daddy Del Norte. Mac Daddy, let's say you're stressed about money.
Yep.
Do you know what part of your body stresses?
Yeah, you know what? My shoulders.
Your shoulders.
Like right up in here?
Yep, right there.
Yep.
Yeah. Interesting. So Robert, you would say stretch your shoulders?
Absolutely. I'd say, well, first you notice it. And if you have a hard time stretching or relaxing it, sometimes what you do is you do the opposite first, just so you can notice it, which is make them even tighter. And then you let go and you release it. And usually you feel that nice warmth of blood going back in there. And that then relaxes it.
Interesting.
And especially when you're noticing both the physical and the thing that typically causes it while you're doing it, both of those tend to come right down pretty quickly. So now, again, it's like hunger. You know, when you eat, you relieve hunger. It's not like you're never going to get hungry again.
Sure.
You know, anxiety or distress or fear is hardwired in our body for survival purposes. It's going to come up at times, but it's not intended to be a chronic state.
Right.
So if you're experiencing it chronically, those very physical responses are very helpful in bringing down the chronic nature of
So if
it.
we see Mac Daddy Del Norte walking around the station with his shoulders wrapped around his head, he's working on getting that blood flowing.
Hopefully.
Dealing with the
Yes.
anxiety. So a first step is just looking at that physical part.
Correct.
And I heard somewhere one of the things is just going outside and in a big area into light. That's something I do sometimes. People at the station will see it every now and then. I just walk outside and look at the beautiful scenery in the industrial area of El Paso.
We are in an industrial area here. It's true.
But it is interesting how the physical is related to the emotional or
Absolutely.
whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
COVID-19. Can we talk just a little bit about Living Hope Counseling and that journey?
Sure.
Because you have folks who really are working through things, and I guess you were supposed to shut down, or what did you do at Living Hope?
You know, and I can't remember if we talked about this last time or not, but we...
Not on air,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't believe.
Oh, yeah. During COVID-19, one of the things that actually made us stand out... Sorry, I'm kicking your camera over here. One of the things that made us stand out is most counseling agencies and most medical offices went to virtual, and we did not.
Okay.
There was a lot of pressure on us to do that, but
To have like a Zoom counseling session?
correct.
Okay.
To just do telehealth. And what my understanding was before COVID, there's some research now that backs this up, but the way our brains work is we know the difference between viewing a face electronically and being in a room with someone. Your brain responds in different ways, and fMRI studies show that there's a difference.
What's
in that.
fMRI?
That's a functional magnetic resonance. It's a brain scan, and they can basically show in real time what your brain is doing.
That's so interesting.
And it responds differently whether you're looking at an electronic image of a person versus if you're looking at a real live person in the room. And part of that lines up with my understanding, not only biologically of what's going on, but biblically what's going on. You know, right there in Genesis, you know, the Creator, God, says right there to us that it's not good for us to be alone. And when we are alone, it affects our brain functioning.
And technology isn't actually bringing us together.
It is not. It allows for certain things to happen, but the region of our brain that processes emotions, which is primarily the amygdala, doesn't activate the same way in real life as it does via telehealth. And the majority of counseling and mental health issues, from our perspective at Living Hope, are on an emotional level, not simply a cognitive or a thinking level.
It's so interesting because this program, 915 Talk, the vast majority of these conversations are done live in person. Occasionally, if we want to interview someone who we believe is important for our audience to hear, we'll do it over the internet. But there is such a different dynamic to those conversations.
Sure.
And
especially here in this room. I'm
Right.
not sure what the impact is of audience members who are listening out there.
Sure.
I would hope there is some impact, but I
Right.
know in the room we can demonstrate that.
That's interesting. Yeah, For me, when I'm talking to someone, I can definitely pick up on cues. I can definitely tell better, have a better understanding of what's going on. If nothing else, there's not a delay, which often happens on the internet. Even that millisecond of a delay really affects the interaction. So I definitely prefer the in-person. But so you stayed open.
Yeah, absolutely. And as such, we expanded pretty significantly. In fact, I had an opportunity back probably a year and a half to 2 years ago to go out of town but still be available for clients to schedule sessions. And roughly I see about 30 people a week. So I went out of town and I notified all of my clients, hey, I'm going to be out of town, but I'll be available via telehealth. You want to take a guess how many said, sure, we'll still meet with you, versus how many said, you know what, we'll just wait until you get back in town?
Well, given the context of our conversation, I'm going to say none of them wanted to do telehealth.
Yeah, it was higher than none, but out of 30, I saw 4 people that week.
Wow.
Yeah. The overwhelming majority were like, no, the reason I'm coming is to see you in person. And so.
How interesting.
Yeah.
So Living Hope stayed open through the whole thing?
We did.
Did you get any pushback on that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we actually had the sheriff's department and the health department show up. And initially they did a lot of questioning, like, why are you opening? Who are you? You have to show me your credentials. And I had to remind them, hey, we're mental health professionals. We fall under the necessary, I'm trying to remember what the word
necessary
was.
people.
Yeah. well, under necessary services, like we would fall under the same umbrella as hospital services.
Right.
And liquor stores, unfortunately, were also considered necessary.
That's hilarious.
Services at that time.
Yeah.
So.
People had their choice: Living Hope Counseling or the liquor store.
Well,
during COVID.
Correct. So one gives life and one takes it away.
Right.
You decide.
Yeah, how interesting. So we're again with Robert Hart of Living Hope Christian Counseling Services. They're right here in El Paso. Good people. Whenever they come up in conversation with local pastors in the community, everyone speaks very highly of them. So great to have Robert here with us. We're going to keep on talking about anxiety, but first we're going to go into a break. This is your daily reminder that 915 Talk is listener supported and is a production of Desert Voice Media. To listen to this conversation again, we always post it the next day after we've been on air, or any previous conversations. You can visit desertvoice.media. That's the website, desertvoice.media, and we would love it if you joined with us financially. Thank you for praying for us. Thank you for being a part of this journey. We do believe these conversations are important to our community. So again, that's your daily reminder. Above all, thank you for listening. So again, we'll be back with Robert Hart after this break. Do not touch that dial.
We'll be right back. Don't touch that dial.
915 Talk is listener supported and is a production of Desert Voice Media. That's right. It's people just like you who make this program possible. Together with Desert Voice, you can learn how to better serve our neighbors and pray for our community. To become a Desert Voice media partner, you can visit desertvoice.media. That's right, that's the website, desertvoice.media. Take a look and join us today in reaching our borderland for Christ.
915.
Testify.
I used to be a hardcore Catholic. I actually wasn't giving all praise and honor to God or Jesus Christ. I was worshiping the Virgin Mary, and little by little I started seeing things that were just not right. And it was by listening to your radio station. I would like to tell you how I came upon this station. I used to work for a concrete company, and we were working on 24-hour shifts, and my truck was assigned to somebody at night. So when I came in the morning, they changed all my stations. And so I had my stations already programmed. So I was changing it, and I came upon KLP. And so I left it there because they called me into dispatch to go get my ticket. And when I came back, I just kept listening to it. And if I had never heard this radio station, who knows, I probably would have still been lost, still living in this darkness.
And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb.
And by the word of their testimony.
KELPradio.com.
We're back. You're listening to 915 Talk.
And we are back. You are listening to 915 Talk. I'm your host, Andy Frecka. Today we're with Robert Hart of Living Hope Christian Counseling Services right here in El Paso. We're talking about anxiety, or maybe hopefully overcoming some anxiety, or some victory over anxiety. In the first part of the program, you were talking about kind of if you're dealing with being anxious, which I think most people are to at some level, kind of identify how that's affecting you physically and focus on that first, and that will kind of help in that moment at least diffuse it. Or,
Correct.
Yeah,
bring down the intensity of it.
Right. But I guess that's not everything we should do.
Correct. Yeah. Well, now that's what you do after the fact. If you want to start dealing with either what's causing it or prevention,
Sure.
you do have to be paying attention to what is going on inside of you. And of course, Paul speaks to anxiety in Philippians, where he encourages us by saying, don't be anxious about anything, but in everything with prayer, with thanksgiving, to let your requests be made known to God. Now, Andy, I know you've heard that before, but the first time I heard that, I mean, that was really revolutionary to me, because I was like, wow, this kind of sounds like a formula, right?
Right.
Don't be anxious. So anxious with a circle and the slash through it.
Yeah.
But in everything, so we pray, plus give thanks, plus let our requests be made known, and that's supposed to equal peace that passes understanding. Right? And so, and you know, when I first heard it, I was like, man, I got to give this thing a try. Yeah. And it was super, super helpful. I mean, it just was. It really was.
Right.
For a while. Right. I'm like, okay, so I'm praying.
Giving thanks.
And I'm asking God to take this thing, whatever this thing would be, and sometimes I felt peace and sometimes I didn't. So I was going through a particular period in my walk where I was feeling pretty discouraged, and a good friend of mine, Jerry Brown, came up and said, hey, what's going on? And, I bemoaned my state of, the formula doesn't work anymore. And Jerry said, listen, you kind of stopped short there. You just told me Philippians 4, 6, and 7. What is Philippians 4, 8? And I was like, standing there staring at her, and like a good Christian, she said, well, go look it up. I was like, dang it. So I left the conversation. I won't make the listeners go look it up. I'll tell you. Of course, I see you, Andy. You're typing up right now. Good for you. Philippians 4, 8 says, now, if anything is noble, if anything is good, if anything is lovely, if anything is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, set your mind on these things.
Yes.
that really, for me, was the missing piece, because it's like, okay, after you pray, what you put your mind on next is going to determine how you subsequently feel. And my problem was I would let my request be made known. I'd give thanks. I would go to the Lord, bring in my request. But then when I said amen, my mind was still thinking about the request. It was still thinking about all the things that were stressing me out as opposed to other things. Like Paul encourages us right there. He says, and a lot of Christians don't get past the very first word. He says, now, if anything is true. Well, there's a lot of things out there that are true that are not excellent and praiseworthy. I mean, there just are.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Sure.
I'm going to say a really sad one, but like both of my parents have died. That's true.
Right.
Is that excellent? Is that praiseworthy? Is that noble or good or right?
Yeah.
It's none of those things.
Right.
Especially if those things are stressing me out. So I have to be able to now take my thoughts captive and set my mind on things that are true, right, noble, good, and excellent.
Right.
So,
wow. So what you're saying is, we do what those verses say. First of all,
yes,
we give thanks. We make our requests known to God.
Yes,
we do all those things. But then what happens next is equally as important.
It is.
It's like, what are you thinking about? Like, don't go back into that spiral.
Correct. Yeah, it's not helpful or useful to me to stay focused on that which I don't have. It's kind of back to where you started with the serenity prayer, right? God, give me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change and the courage to then take action on the things that I can change.
Right.
And, of course, the wisdom to know the difference.
Right.
And the things that I can't change, then I generally, those things are not worth me spending time dwelling on them. I acknowledged them in my prayer before when I let my requests known. So I'm not in denial of them, but I'm not going to dwell on them, right? What does dwell mean? It means live there.
Right.
Station, position yourself, plant yourself.
Yeah.
Those things are not worth dwelling upon. We dwell upon things above, right? Things that are right and true and good and excellent. So, and there's a lot of right, good, excellent, pure, and lovely things in my life now. Most of them abide inside my wife, right? So when I think about those types of things, particularly that she exhibits in my life, those bring me life.
Yeah.
Those bring me hope, encouragement.
Yeah.
They don't typically bring me anxiety.
Right.
So,
yeah. So how do you determine what things you can change and what things you can't change?
boy, that's a $1 trillion question, right?
Robert Hart of Living Hope Christian Counseling Services.
Yeah.
Answer the impossible question.
I mean, typically it's, as you just explore it, usually it takes another person in your life to be asking questions about it with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's what a lot of our counselors do, but it doesn't take another professional, right? It could be good friends having a conversation like this to say, you know, I'm spending my time thinking about, well, I mean, Scripture gives us some counsel there, right? If I'm anxious about how tall I am,
who of you by word can add a single cubit to their stature?
There it is. So now some of our medical professionals out there might say, well, hey, we have the technology now to lengthen your legs. And
right.
But barring that, because most of us wouldn't then have the financial resources to do that. So that is not something that's necessarily actionable on my part.
Right.
And so, like, give me something that might, money. There,
right.
We'll go back to that one.
Sure.
I was going to say, you
That's
said,
an easy one.
Yeah. Are you working? And are you earning income?
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yes.
So you are taking the necessary action steps. So now the next one might be then, well, are you living within your means?
Right.
Right? If you make $1,000 a month, but you are spending $1,500 a month,
right.
I'm going to have to take some action steps.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And I may not like the action steps, but they're known. And typically once you start knowing what you're dealing with anxiety is also typically fear that's based on that which you do not know. Once it's known, typically anxiety and fear tends to drop off as well.
Let's go back to that because I think you said something important. Well, everything's been important, but you said anxiety is what? It's the fear of what you do not know?
It is often based on things that you don't know. That's correct. Once you know, oftentimes you may not like it, but it's known. And so the anxiety
goes
portion.
down.
Now maybe your sadness replaces it because like, hey,
Right.
I'm spending, go back to the financial example. If I'm spending $1,500, but I only make $1,000,
Right.
I may be sad that I'm going to have to cut my quality of life because I really like my Starbucks.
So it's kind of like what if? That's what anxiety is. What if?
That is often the very heart of anxiety is that phrase. What if this happens? And listen, there's been so much research done on this, on that little phrase, what if. Overwhelmingly, the things that you fear could happen do not.
Right.
So like people that tend to be, you said you tend to be an anxious person, Andy. If you look back over your life and say, think of all the things that you've worried about, how many of them actually occurred?
Right.
Let's do an impromptu case study right now.
Very few.
Very few.
Very
of them.
few.
And yet that has not stopped you from worrying continuously about future things.
Exactly.
But when you slow down and remind yourself, oh yeah, these things almost never happen.
Right.
Now I'm actually controlling my thoughts and directing my thoughts again.
I'm remembering a Mark Twain quote, and I looked it up just to make sure I got it right. I've had a lot of worries in my life, most of which never happened. And that's yeah.
Sure.
I think for a lot of us, and it's good to be reminded of. One of our fears is very often that when we're driving home that there'll be traffic.
That is an excellent segue. That is excellent.
And so, Charlie Wood, what are you seeing out in the roads today? We want to know what there is so we can overcome anxiety in our lives.
Well, Eddie, there's quite a few trouble spots I want to get to first. I-10 East right now at Schuster. This crash is on the left lane. There's a big, seems like a big rider truck or something, but it's on the left lane there, a big yellow truck there. And I see that it's slowing things down to Asarco. Maybe it's getting up to the executive area. Again, those I-10 eastbound lanes are bumper to bumper there as you're headed eastbound. On the other side of the fence, I-10 West and Mesa, here we have a crash on the right shoulder, but that's slowing things down there to Osborne. I-10 West at Osborne to Mesa there on that crash. It's over on the right shoulder, but we are looking to just slowing down to look at it there. Other crashes, Mesa and Donovan, we have a crash here. Helen or Troy in Red, we have a crash. And also in Central, we have a crash. Cotton and Texas on a crash. Caution here in these areas. Andy, back to you.
Thank you, Charlie One. And we had someone call into the station today asking about the My Little Town Cafe on Treywood. Can you fill in those listeners who have not mustered the courage to learn about the Daily Menudo?
Yeah, you know, the Mi Pueblito Cafe, 3120 Treywood. We have the Daily Menudo, delicious. Now, they close today at 4 o'clock, but you catch them tomorrow, 7 o'clock till 4 p.m. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner specials, the menudo every day, and we have the 9:35 Comida Corrida lunch special, 11 to 2. It's all there. Mi Pueblito Cafe, 3120 Treywood. Andy, back to you.
Thank you, Charlie One. We'll talk soon.
You bet.
And we're back with Robert Hart of Living Hope Christian Counseling Service. And it's interesting, Robert, because the verses you mentioned have come up so many times on this program.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't do a biblical focus every day. Far from it, actually. Mm-hmm. We're just talking about the community, but it's particularly Philippians 4:8. But you brought up Philippians 4:6, which says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God." And Mac Daddy reminded me, he wrote this in on our little message machine while we were talking, that Tina, who's the radio station office manager, wrote that on a board here at the station 19 years ago, and it's never been erased.
Wow.
So it's
she was mentioning that she prayed over that verse, not having anybody to turn to. So and that helped her through those years.
Very cool, very cool. So we talked about the physical aspect of anxiety.
Well, let me connect a little bit more with the physical and the mental and emotional, which is physiologically, your body's response is exactly the same for fear or anxiety and excitement. The same things happen inside of you biologically.
Yes.
Your blood pressure goes up.
Yeah.
Your heart rate goes up. Your breathing gets a little more shallow. Your muscles get a little more tense. But can we all agree you'd much rather feel excited than anxious?
Yeah, I read something about how like Olympic level performers don't experience fear before they do their event. They experience excitement.
Absolutely.
And it's the same thing.
It is literally and biologically the same thing.
How interesting.
The only difference is what you say to yourself. I mean, take a roller coaster, for example. If you're telling yourself, oh my gosh, we're all going to die, this thing is going to fly off the tracks and I will not survive the experience.
Yeah.
Do you think that will be exciting for you or terrifying? Right? It's going to be horrific. It'll be awful.
Right.
However, for the rest of us, when we say this is going to be the most amazing thing ever and like it's great, but our physical experiences will literally be the same, but our emotional experiences will be completely the opposite. So when you find yourself, again, in that state of anxiety or fear, it's because you are anticipating negatively the outcome, right? You're anticipating this is going to end horribly, right? And who's making you decide, oh, this is going to end horribly when it hasn't happened yet? Who's making you put your mind on that?
You?
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is where Paul encourages us. He says, look, let's take our thoughts captive to the obedience of Christ. Now, he takes it a step further. We're using an example that, Paul talks about taking our thoughts captive to everything that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. And the principle is just as applicable, though, in this scenario. So if I'm thinking the outcomes are going to be negative, I can actively, instead of being a passenger to my thoughts, I can drive my thoughts, right?
Sure.
Breathing and thinking are very similar in this way. Okay. How many times have you thought about your breathing today, Andy?
Almost none.
Yeah, I was going to say until I asked you right now.
Yeah, I only think about it. So I struggle with with insomnia. Yeah. So that's the one place I've learned to think about it.
Yeah.
Breathe deeply a few times. Nothing crazy, but it does help me fall back asleep.
There you go.
Yeah.
So most of us don't think much about it, and yet, how many times have you breathed since you woke up this morning? Continuously, right? Just continuously.
Right.
It happens whether you think about it or not.
Right.
Well, our thoughts are kind of the same way. They're just going in the background. You may not be actively driving them, but they're going somewhere.
That's true.
But if the place that they're taking you is not helpful, we forget, oh yeah, I don't have to be a passenger to my thoughts. I can actually slide over into the driver's seat and say, that's not helpful. I think I'll steer my thoughts this direction.
How interesting.
Now we get back to Philippians 4:8, right?
Yeah.
Now then, set your mind, if anything's true, right, noble, good, excellent, or praiseworthy, let's set our minds on those things.
Yeah.
And it changes our destination. It changes the outcome. So...
Right.
Now, that's challenging to do all the time. I'm not aware of anybody that does that continuously. Some people are more practiced at it and more vigilant than others. But when we find ourselves struggling with things like depression or anxiety, it's usually because the things that are in the driver's seat are just not helpful. So if we slide back over into the driver's seat, we can think about the things that are helpful. Now we're back to the things that we control. Right.
So what would be some very, I guess, normal, noble things to think about, like in agreement with Philippians 4:8?
Yeah.
Instead of worrying about those things, like what would, like, if someone's coming in and talking to you, what would be some of the ideas, I guess, that you would give?
Well, usually what I say is, tell me the things in life that you're thankful for. right? And that's also now connected back with Philippians 4:6, right? Which is with thanksgiving. So what are some of the things in your life that you're thankful for? Those things typically tend to be excellent, praiseworthy, and noble, right? I'm thankful for my health. I'm thankful for my job. I'm thankful for my friends. I'm grateful for my church. I'm grateful that I am able to walk. There's that. My list can just really go on and on and on in that way. And almost all of those things are noble, right? They're going to be things that are worthwhile for me to spend my time thinking about. So that's usually where I steer people. Because once we start doing that, then a lot of times what people will end up with is they start going down that road, but then they're like, yeah, I'm thankful for that, but... and then now we're off the trail. And it's like, hang on, what happened? What made you get off that trail? Right? What made you get off the...
This time's different than the past 40 years. This time's different.
Yeah. Well, tell what you mean by that.
Well, I think a lot of times it's you are convincing your mind that, well, I'm a Christian, so God's been faithful my whole life. But this might be the time.
This will be the time. Yeah, he's going to forsake me this time.
And I mean, I think that's honestly what's going through my mind at times. You know, it's like, and I have to remind myself, I mean, I've been through some interesting situations in my life. And somehow I made it to today, you know, if nothing else.
Correct. You're 100% successful at surviving until today. Correct.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, last time when we talked, you were talking about how sometimes you have pastors who come to Living Hope Christian Counseling. Do you also have teenagers?
We do. We see the entire age range span, except for little kids. We don't have anybody in our office right now who specializes in working with kids under the age of 10. And typically we refer to other places in town that specialize, because there's a lot of groups in town that aren't necessarily Christian, but they specialize in working with kids that have either trauma or behavior problems. But we do work with adolescents. I happen to live with a teenager in my home right now, so it's not just help; it's community. It's commiserating. Really, tell me what it's like living with your teenager. Wow. You're not alone.
I have some teenagers as well. Great kids.
Of course. But kids.
But I would like to talk a little bit about anxiety in teenagers, because they're in a different world than we grew up in. But first, we're going to take a break. Again, we're with Robert Hart of Living Hope Christian Counseling Service. We're talking about anxiety, and it's been good because we got a few tools for overcoming anxiety. And when we get back from the break, we'll be talking about anxiety in teenagers. Do not touch that dial.
We'll be right back. Don't touch that dial.
Hey, KLP listeners, this is Pastor Terry Gray of Calvary Chapel Sun City on El Paso's west side. I want to invite you to join me at a new time at 5 p.m. Monday through Friday right here on KELP. If you're driving home at 5 p.m. or doing work around the house or getting your evening started, I invite you to join me as we go through the Bible, chapter by chapter, verse by verse. There is nothing more valuable than the Word of God, so let's invest our time in learning more about it together each day. That's our Bible study program, Summons, each weekday at 5 p.m. right here on KELP. Are you looking for a Bible teaching church on the west side of El Paso? This is Terry Gray, pastor of Calvary Chapel Sun City and speaker on the Summons broadcast heard each weekday at 5 p.m. here on this station. Calvary Chapel Sun City is located at 960 West Borderland Road on the west side of El Paso. We hold services on Wednesday evenings at 7 and on Sunday mornings at 9 and 11. You can find out more information about us on the web at www.ccsuncity.org. The Lord bless you, my friends.
listening to 915 Talk.
We are back, and you're listening to 915 Talk. I'm your host, Andy Frecka. Today we're with Robert Hart of Living Hope Christian Counseling Services. Always good to have Robert here with us. Today we're talking about anxiety, hopefully overcoming anxiety. Before we went into the break, I just mentioned I'd like to talk about young people, teenagers especially, dealing with anxiety. They're in a different world than what we grew up in. There's obviously the social media. There's there's the smartphone. I don't know what else to call it, but an epidemic on screens. What else is out there, and what are they dealing with?
Well, the whole social media phenomena is tapping into social anxiety and social outrage, which exists with all of us. You know, the concept of social outrage exists with everybody. And for example, if you don't believe it, the next time you go to, you know, Cielo Vista Mall or a crowded gathering, just pick a rock up and throw it at somebody and see how everyone around you reacts. Right? They won't tolerate it because it's like, that's outrageous morally as a social construct. We're hardwired for that inside of us. Social media is exploiting that by basically putting all these things in front of you, and it's socially outraging people. And so they're living in this constant state of tension, of being kind of socially outraged, which is right adjacent to fear and anxiety. And so
interesting.
It's they're feeding off of each other. And we're also designed to take feedback socially. But when you start taking us out of cell phone and smartphone communities, the number of people who are going to be giving you social feedback is a circle of about maybe 20 people, maybe.
Sure.
Well, how many people do you have access? How many people have friended you on, if you have a social media profile, Instagram?
About 3,000 on Facebook.
So 3,000 people giving you feedback. You're not biologically programmed to know what to do with that.
Sure.
And by the way, that feedback used to end when you went home and closed the door behind you.
Right.
And now it's just me and my family. That's it. Well, that's not true anymore. That feedback never ends, and it provokes and produces tons and tons of chronic anxiety.
That's interesting. I mean, you when I asked about this, you went straight to outrage. I was expecting something different. I was just expecting the nervousness of a life of always checking on your phone.
FOMO, yes, fear of missing out.
Yeah, or whatever that is.
Yep.
But you went straight to outrage, which is an even stronger, of course.
It is. Well, but they're connected. They really are.
Okay.
Right? Because as we notice things that outrage us, then we get into the social feedback. If that does not outrage you, then what's going to happen socially?
Everyone's going to be outraged with me.
Well, absolutely. Then you become marginalized. You become an outsider and a social outcast. That creates tons of social anxiety, tons of it. And so now we have a world where we're very polarized because some people get socially and morally outraged at activity A, while others get socially and morally outraged at activity B. And if you're not on team A or team B, then you're an outsider. So that produces so much anxiety in people. So this is why I think as a church body, I think we're uniquely positioned to really bless and minister to people, to say, you know what, wherever you are, we accept you. We love you, and we'll figure this stuff out together. We're not going to marginalize you. We're going to love you.
Because you're different or...
Yeah. You don't have to drink the Kool-Aid to be accepted, right? That you just have to perhaps not assault me.
Right.
Right? That's a pretty low standard.
Right. Yeah, I mentioned I spent a little bit of time on AI today looking at, AI's fun.
It's fantastic tool.
Yeah,
I agree.
It's a little bit scary. But it was talking about how young adults report the highest rates of anxiety.
Yep.
What would you say to a parent who has, particularly, let's say, teenager who is just struggling with this? Would you have some pointers?
The best thing I do with parents with their teenagers is say, spend time with them.
Okay.
Just one-on-one, preferably FaceTime, and I don't mean Apple FaceTime on your phone. Like literally, like sit down face-to-face and talk and listen and ask questions and explore with your kid, right? Because you want to send the message to your kids just like the message that God sends us, right? I will never leave you or forsake us, right? That's what God says. He'll never leave us or forsake us. That's not qualified with unless you fill in the blank.
Yeah.
I will never leave you or forsake you. That's a message as a parent. When you give that to your child, it calms anxiety down. It casts out fear.
Yeah.
Right? The solution to anxiety is perfect love casts out fear. And that's as close as we're going to get to perfect love this side of heaven is, hey, I don't know how this story is going to end.
Sure.
I cannot guarantee that your friends aren't going to reject you or mock you, or I can't guarantee any of that. Here's what I can guarantee. No matter what happens, I'll love you and we'll figure it out together. That is a powerful, powerful message. So, and I think that's the message as believers that we're supposed to be giving to our kids. That's the message that we want to give to the world, that God says he does love you and he won't leave you or forsake you. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to get martyred, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, all of the first century
I don't know why you pointed at me when you said
well,
that.
well, because you came from Russia, right? You came from the mission field, so
Right.
you know there's no guarantees for our safety.
Sure.
What there's guarantees is we don't have to go through it alone. That's a big deal, and just
It's a
knowing
huge
that
deal.
tends to bring it casts out fear.
Yeah.
That's what it does. So,
Right.
and I'm a fan of that.
Yeah, that is amazing. Yeah, so it is interesting. You bring up the subject of outrage. We're talking about teenagers. We're talking about anxiety, social media. I noticed this for the first time really about, it might have been 20 years ago. And you just mentioned, most of our listeners know I spent most of my adult life overseas in Russia as a missionary. I've been in El Paso for the past 3 years. But about 20 years ago, I was visiting the States. And I was at a shopping center parking lot. And in Russia, if you're driving through a shopping center parking lot and someone is crossing the parking lot, you just keep driving. And I did that. That's not what I was supposed to do. And the level of outrage that this woman exhibited was just completely
Unhinged.
off the charts. Yeah. And another example would be Moscow has some of the worst traffic in the world. But if you are driving around everyone to that exit, like the bridge traffic here, and you want to get in, they'll always let you in. Whereas here, it's like, I'm going to teach you a lesson.
Yep.
I'm not letting you in. And it's been interesting to see this level of the word I've always used when I think about it, what I think is a change in America, and it did not just from COVID, but it's just this indignation.
Yeah.
This
outrage, moral outrage.
Yeah, this moral outrage. So, I mean, I guess you already gave the answer, but how are we to be different as the church?
Yeah, I think it's such an opportunity, right? I can't take credit for this, but I think it was Mark Comer, maybe, who it's whatever the author who wrote the book, The Relentless Elimination of Hurry.
My wife just read that.
Yeah, it's a great book, and his whole point is, listen, when you give up your right to be first, when you give up this whole construct of time that everything has to happen in a certain way by a certain time, then suddenly you begin to realize, wow, I am missing so many things. And he challenges us to do things like very intentionally drive in the right lane 5 miles below the speed limit.
Yeah.
When you go to the supermarket, intentionally pick the longest lane, not the shortest. It forces you to look around and notice what's happening around you instead of laser focus on what your objective is. And we start actually potentially connecting with each other, because when I get in the longest lane, knowing that I'm going to have to wait, I happen to start noticing the other people in line.
Yeah.
I have to actually look at my checker and maybe interact with them and go, wow, they look like they're having a rough day.
Right.
It's not just about how can I get out of here.
Because everyone has read that book and now they're getting in their line.
That's right. There's only one line now. Walmart loves us because now they only have one checker. Thank you, Mark. So,
That's hilarious.
I think that's the best way that we can start to be salt and light. But listen, I got to say, I've lived in Austin, Dallas, San Antonio. One of the things I actually love about El Paso is when I go to the supermarket and I have one item in my hand, people wave me up to the front.
Yeah.
That never happened in Austin. Never happened in Dallas.
Yeah.
And people are happy to do it. They're like, oh, you only have one thing. Come on up.
Yeah.
I'm like, are you kidding me? So I love waving other people on now.
You like to go in the longest line with one item
Just
to get waved to the front.
To me, that's a way we can be salt and light to people in a day where it's about what's in it for me.
Right.
Right. It's about, how can I give life instead of how can I take life for me? Right. Didn't Jesus say something about that?
I think he might have.
He who seeks to gain his life, something.
Will lose it. Yeah. Yeah. So, Robert, we've been talking about anxiety for 56 minutes. Yeah. And, one of the things we say on the radio is everything we've said is for informational purposes only.
Yeah.
If you need help, go to a licensed professional. At what point with anxiety would you recommend seeking out a licensed professional, such as Living Hope Counseling or elsewhere?
Sure. Usually what I say is when it is interfering with your ability to function in your daily life, right? If you are experiencing anxiety and stress so much that you can't perform your job duties, you're losing your friendships and your close relationships, like your spouse doesn't talk to you anymore.
Sure.
When it's interfering with your life,
right.
Definitely come and see us because we want to help you with that. We're never going to eliminate fear and anxiety totally, but it should not be destroying or driving your life.
Sure. Love it. And I love that you gave us some tools to work with. If you just joined us, be sure to find 915 Talk on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Go to desertvoice.media. Find this conversation. It'll be available tomorrow morning. Listen to it from the beginning. This is very helpful, Robert, getting these tools and just being reminded of these things. Really appreciate you coming in today.
My pleasure.
And as we always say, let's learn to love our city, love our neighbor, and give God all the glory. This has been 915 Talk. You have been listening to 915 Talk, a production of Desert Voice Media. In order to listen to previous editions of 915 Talk, just visit desertvoice.media. Let's learn together to love our city, love our neighbors, and give God all the glory.